Okay, so what's the reason why we started with this Pro Ribbon technology? Well, there are, according to us, some distinct advantages with this technology. One of the first things that comes to mind, of course, is the lighter weight moving mass that results in a very, very fast transient response. So the distortion, the actual distortion of the system, which would result in a time smear, for instance, is far less. There's more linearity in the frequency domain, so the frequency response is flat from 1 kHz to 20 kHz, so it's also a wide frequency response. That makes it easy to have a two-way system which goes from, let's say, 60 Hz or even 45 Hz with two components all the way up to 20 kHz. Another advantage is in this case the high power handling. The peak power handling creates a RMS to peak ratio of 1 to 15, which is a very high dynamic ratio. If you compare that to the compression driver, that has a dynamic ratio of 1:2. So in other words, 100 watt RMS power handling would result in a 200 watts peak power handling. With this system, if it's 100 watts power handling, it would result in a 1500 watt peak power handling. So it's a very, very dynamic system. Another clear advantage is the radiation projection characteristics, if you wish, of the driver. It is basically a line source, so it has a cylindrical wavefront by nature. That means there's a distinct advantage in applications where you're going to use it with a coupling plane and a non-coupling plane. So in other words, a line array, or as we described, a line source system. We don't need large horns, large waveguides or long waveguides to control the dispersion pattern, which leaves us with a much higher signal to noise ratio, less distortion, and so on and so on. Another example of the benefits of the system is a purely resistive load. So the impedance is completely flat over the entire frequency response. So we don't need to create a impedance correction circuitry in the passive filters, the passive crossovers. So also there we save a lot on parts that are in the signal path, so it's even more clearer and more natural transient response of the system. Then of course, as the last item, is usually the first question people ask, or at least the first thought they have on Pro Ribbon technology, is reliability. Because having been taught or experienced in the past with true ribbon technology, you know, the true ribbon, or we would call the pure ribbon, is of course very fragile, has a low power handling, and so on and so on. This technology is very reliable because of the peak power handling, because of the transient response, and of course because of the way we build up the whole structure. And in fact, it's so reliable that we dare to claim it's even more reliable than a compression driver. The reason for that, again, is the lightweight moving mass. If you know that one of the main reasons why compression drivers get blown is the fact that the weight of the moving mass is so high that in average a 2-inch compression driver can have a linear frequency response up to 8 kHz, which is 8,000 cycles per second. But if you go beyond that, the speed is so high that the mass can't follow the speed that's applied to it. So in other words, if you would like high fidelity response at 16 kHz, that's twice the problem speed. And if then you would say, I need a 3 dB more output to make it a more nice, clear reproduction, you would have double the problem speed and twice the power applied to the diaphragm, to the speaker itself. So that's just an accident waiting to happen. If you know that there's a pre-HF high frequency emphasis in line arrays to overcome air absorption, so there's a boost in the high frequency range, and you know that the compression driver is already distorting a lot, up to 90%. Mind you, at the peak power handling it's a 90% distortion. You have a pre-emphasis on the HF, which is already a problem speed for the compression driver. And then again, you have the other part, is that with a compression driver spherical radiator, you have to move or transform that into a cylindrical radiator in a line array. You create a long horn in front of it, which induces even more distortion. So furthermore, you get a lot of distortion of a unit that already generates a lot of distortion, and you get also the problem of the speed. So it's no wonder that either the compression driver has to be controlled very carefully with processors, so even limiting the dynamic range of the system even more, and on the other hand have a lot of distortion that has to be overcome, can be to some extent camouflaged by dedicated impulse response correction, filtering and whatsoever. But the funny thing is, we still try to improve a system that has been designed when the silent movie was converted to the talkies, which is about 90 years ago. So now with new media coming up, digital dynamics of fairly any media, non-compressed media, there's no reason why you should compress media with the large storage capacity nowadays with compact flash and so on and so on. You can get a full resolution digital dynamic sound reproduction now available at concert sound pressure levels from the small systems that you have seen, but the technology is relatively easily converted into very, very high sound pressure level systems that can be used for concerts up to 10, maybe 12,000 people, and maybe even beyond.